This is TechTalk Detroit with Brian Spurgeon and Chuck Lobert. TechTalk Detroit brings you the latest in tech news and Detroit happenings every week.
Welcome back to TechTalk Detroit. Chuck here with Brian. And, we were kind of talking beforehand about, one of the big we get around the technical departments and such. And one of those is around career growth. How do you keep your staff engaged? How do you help them to be able to continue to grow in their career? And, specifically looking at the technical staff. So welcome, Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. The weather finally heated up, so had a good long holiday weekend. I got no complaints here. What about you, Chuck?
Yeah, it was a beautiful weekend. It's funny. Like the weather report keeps on saying that the next day it's going to rain, and then the next day I wake up and it's sunny and it says probably not going to rain today. So I'm loving it. So you know me, the hotter the better as far as I'm concerned. So once we started hitting the 80, 85, I was in my zone. I love that weather. So give me sun and hot, and I'm happy.
Yep. Yeah, the weekend was good. I got out on the boat a ton, but then without fail, the air conditioning unit went out. So, it's the hottest stretch of weather we've had in 8 months, and I don't have air conditioning, but
that's the way it always goes.
I'm not even complaining at this point. I'll take it.
Yeah, we were talking about it before. I can try to help you. I've YouTubed how to fix my air conditioner probably 3 times in the past 2 years. Between that, and I've got a buddy that works for a HVAC company, and so I'll bounce some stuff off of him, and then once I determine what the issue is, I YouTube it and generally able to fix it. So it's been pretty easy. So
absolutely.
Hopefully it's nothing major on yours, because worst thing would be to have to replace
it. Don't be jinxing me.
But anyways, as I mentioned, we thought a good topic for this week would be around career growth for the techs. And so, we thought we'd go into that, talk a little bit about training, talk about, how you keep them engaged in the company, how you help them to want to be able to continue to grow, and kind of what those paths are. And, one of the big things that we do is a 1-year plan, so that really every single year they're able to have a set plan where they can know exactly what's going to be expected of them for that year, and we review it on a regular basis. So those are kind of the main topics that we thought we'd go through. So starting with training, Brian, I know you, with leading the technical side of things, deal with this a little bit more than I do, in specific relation to the tech. So what do you think about when we hire a new engineer? What thoughts are you looking at to figure out what's the right training plan for this particular engineer? Or is it just cookie cutter, everybody gets the same type of thing?
No, I think that's a good question. I think ultimately it is not cookie cutter. I think there's certainly a lot of requirements and, certain programs that you should have in place that are pretty static. For example, when we hire somebody in, we require them to read a certain amount of, company or cultural based books. And we can get into detail of some of the ones that we choose here. But, I think that's something that's pretty static, because that kind of communicates early on a message of what the company looks at in terms of how we view. Also, it helps with terminology. A lot of the terms and stuff that we use in meetings and different types of appointments like that come from a lot of the books we've read. So I think it is key to give them that early on so that they do understand, and it kind of helps speed them up a bit. But in terms of actual training, it should be very different, because it's you got different types of personnel. Everybody kind of responds differently. You see a lot of guys that are very much the hands-on type, and that's how they learn. And there's other guys and girls that prefer to just read and go through digital content. So I think it goes back to when we were all in grade school, right? And there's just everybody's got a unique way of learning. So I think it's important to kind of give your employees the best chance to succeed. And so, yeah, I think there's a little bit of overlap in terms of requirements, but a lot of what we do is kind of custom to the actual employee.
Yeah, and I think also you got to look at, one, what are the needs of the business? Because, maybe a staff member comes up to you and says, I really want to learn Unix or Linux, but if you don't work with Unix or Linux, obviously there's no value to the company to have that training. So piece of it is what's valuable to the business, and then also you got to look at the individual employee and where is their current skill set at. So you might hire two people, and one might have a lot of experience with the cloud, and one might have no experience with the cloud. So obviously you're not going to send them both to training on Microsoft Azure. But you want to customize it for whatever is really needed by that particular staff member.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit loosely on something there. It's twofold. So a lot of what we look at when we're hiring is somebody that probably hasn't had a good opportunity to expand their skill set, and that's really what they're looking for. From my experience, that tends to work out to be our best hires. An employee that was in a place where they didn't necessarily not enjoy their job, but they pretty much reached the ceiling and there wasn't a lot of room for growth, and the company wasn't valuing advancing their skill set. So they're looking to jump ship, move to another company that is more in line with that. And that's very common to what I see a lot of people that come through when we interview. So that's like one of the things I look for first is somebody that is wanting to advance their career. But I think that's a two-way street, because I think the employer themselves also needs to value and buy into training and advancing growth. I think it starts with the employer. So, you can't expect your employees to just get better if it's not part of your culture and it's not something you live and breathe. And I think that it really does start with the company first. So I think you really have to buy into the fact that, training is an investment. It is investing into my business, and the capacity for my business will increase if I do invest into this. And I think if you have that mindset going in, then I think everything else follows suit. Certainly it helps when you have the employees that are, chomping at the bit to get more education and more skill advancement. But I think even the ones that are kind of on the fence, when they see the company kind of take a stance of, hey, a year from now, we're going to be a better company because we're all going to put in our extra time, I think you get a much better result in the long run. So I do think that's kind of where it starts is from the top. And I think, it's, you got to make that stance of, hey, this is going to be important moving forward. And I think from there, a lot of the other stuff kind of comes easy, because I think most of the employees rally behind that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, even though you have to kind of customize things per staff member, you still need to have some kind of standardization when it comes to options that are available for them. I know for us, the platform that we've chosen to use is Pluralsight, and I know you were involved in that particular decision. So, I thought, maybe you could talk a little bit about Pluralsight and why do we use that? Is it something that you would recommend for other businesses to use? I know I've been in there. I've been impressed with it. I think the training looks good. They've got lots of options, but from your standpoint, what enticed you about that particular platform?
Yeah, I think, that platform's been great. So that is something that I came across at a Microsoft Ignite conference, and they had a huge booth set up. Actually, no, I take that back. The first time I ran across them, they had a very small booth kind of off in the corner. And this past year, they had a huge display because they're backed so heavily by these other entities such as Microsoft. But what I think Pluralsight has that's great is it's a platform that you can actually track all of the engagement that all of your employees have. I can see every time somebody's logged in. I can see how much time they spend per week, per month, average training. I can assign training to my employees. I can build channels for new hires. So that's a common one I do is every time we hire somebody new, we'll create a new channel and just kind of cater the training, the wherever we think maybe the gaps are in their skill set from their past employment. We'll kind of go in there and I have, 15 or 20 courses that are my go-tos depending on what we need to assign. So that from that standpoint, it makes it super easy to manage. If you're just talking about tax, you want them to get certified, right? They can tell you they're training, I'm studying, I'm doing this and that, but you have no way to gauge that, right? I mean, especially if the employee isn't bought in, or if they haven't bought into the fact that you're really bought into training, it's very hard to manage that. And what ends up happening is they're not putting the time in. There's no accountability, and you get to a point where you're like, all right, I need you to schedule your exam. They schedule it and they completely bomb it because they've spent an hour or 2 hours the night before the exam, and that's all they've done. So
right.
I think from that standpoint, it's really good to see that type of engagement. It also helps separate. You see the people that are really motivated by that, and you can kind of let them have other opportunities, right? Somebody that's going and investing a ton of time in this platform to learn more, when an opportunity comes up where maybe we want to send somebody away for training, that's kind of the first place I'm going to is, all right, who already is kind of put in their time and who has earned this opportunity to go out and do a training boot camp or something. So from that standpoint, management, it's great. The other thing is just the library is so robust. So pretty much anything under the moon from Microsoft is in there. And beyond that, though, there's a ton of development stuff. So anything with Linux, Java, C++, whatever it is that you need to train to, they have tons of platforms in there that they cover. There's also a ton of like soft skill leadership training, communication training, which I think is also very key, especially if we're talking about from the tech standpoint. Us techs, we're not the most. Typically, it's the social engagement isn't the strong suit, right?
Right.
I mean, that's just a common stereotype amongst techs, and a lot of times it's kind of true for a lot of personality types. So if you got somebody that's really good technically and you need to kind of soften them up a bit on their soft skills, there's a lot of great go-to material in there that kind of helps personalize them a bit more. But yeah, it's in the library is always up to date. They're constantly updating it. Microsoft itself, they have their own learning platform, and there are people that write their courses for them. They're also contributing to Pluralsight. So I think that's what I like is it's not just third party putting together training plans, and it's not just based on certifications. There's a lot of plans in there for certs, but it's more for actual learning, actual supplemental learning. And I think the last huge benefit of it, though, is it has the ability to give you like a proficiency score. So on a lot of their big plans, you want to tackle Azure security, right? You start with taking a 50 question test that has all different range of questions from beginner to advanced. And based on how you're answering those questions, the questions will scale, and it'll give you a score of 1 to 300, I believe. Yeah, 1 to 300. And depending on where you start, then that's where or wherever you score it, that's where it'll place you into that plan. So if you place high, you score in a 200 range, it's going to bypass that beginner level stuff and put them right into like an intermediate portion of that course. And that course might have 40 hours of training, but you might test out of 20 hours of it. So from that standpoint, it's great because you're not wasting a ton of time having people go through things they know. So I think it's a very robust platform, accessible through the web. There's also a mobile app that works out well too. So I really like the Pluralsight. We did CBT Nuggets in the past. That's a good one too. I know a lot of people prefer that, but I think that's much more aimed at helping you pass a certification. For me personally, I felt like that was the goal of CBT Nuggets, was to just get your cert. It didn't give you that a lot of that above and beyond stuff that I think Pluralsight brings in. So very, very much would endorse that product.
Yeah, and I think the big, outside of the technical, the soft skills are huge, and that's where the training that you mentioned certainly comes into play. But that's also now where more cultural business level books come into play. And that's something that I think a lot of people that are leading a technical team miss, to be frank, is I think they worry about those certifications, they worry about that technical training, but they don't worry so much about the soft skills and the helping them think about things from a business perspective versus a technical perspective. And ultimately, if they're able to have that business level viewpoint on things, it really helps them to even better serve our clients, or to better serve, whether you're dealing with businesses as clients, or you work for a specific business and your clients, so to speak, are the end users. When you can think about things from a business perspective and think about, well, how is this actually impacting the business, your response is different. The passion that you have for your work is different. Just everything changes. It really changes the whole personality of the support, in my opinion, when you're really looking at things from that business perspective. And that's where I think a lot of those business level books come into play. So we're not really talking about necessarily more training books and books on specific soft skills, but my favorite book that we have everybody read is The Go-Giver. And it really has nothing to do with their job, so to speak, from a nuts and bolts standpoint, but it's really all about, it's told as a story. It's a book. I think the writer's Bob Berg, and it's a quick read, and it's told as a story. It starts with a gentleman that's described as a go-giver, and then he gets this mentor in business, and he transitions into what they call a go-giver, and effectively, I think I said that wrong, go-getter to start into a go-giver. But effectively what it means is just being willing to just help people and don't worry so much about what am I going to get out of this, but being open to just providing value to people. There's the 5 laws of success that he's got in there. And I think of, I had a discussion this morning with a gentleman that called us over the weekend, said he was interested in learning more about our services. So I called him back. Ultimately, what he was doing was buying a home computer on Amazon, and somehow found our number and had some questions. So, we don't sell computers to home. We don't support home users. So I'm not going to get anything out of that discussion. So I could have just said, you know what, sorry, we don't do that, and hung up the phone and been done. Ultimately, I ended up being on the phone with him for about a half an hour. A lot of the time, just talking about what he's got going on, and the frustrations he had around trying to buy a computer on Amazon and knowing what he's going to get. And he bought a computer from Best Buy, but it wasn't exactly what he wanted, and we just talked through things. And ultimately, like I say, we got nothing out of it, but who knows, down the road, maybe that guy works for a company and thinks of us when they're looking for a new IT provider. Maybe not, but just being open to just help them out. Like, who cares if we're going to get something out of it? It's not like it's taken a lot of time or anything. So I think that's a big thing. And when people look at how they operate, I mean, I know you just last week you helped out a company that could be considered a competitor. They were having an issue that they posted on a forum that you're a part of, and you were able to reach out and help them very quickly figure out something. So again, helping a competitor might seem off to other people, but when you have that go-giver mentality, now down the road, maybe you're running into an issue with your technical team, and you post on that same forum, and they're going to be a lot more likely to say, hey, let me help you out now. It's just kind of being open for that.
Yeah, I think it's key to pay it forward. I agree. I love that book as well. Another one I'll just throw in real quick is The Compassionate Geek. When we're talking about, in particular, with soft skills and technicians, a lot of times the techs have a great skill set, but they're a little rough around the edges in terms of communicating to users, the ability to scale down a conversation to where the typical end user can understand what's going on, and then also if somebody is in the wrong per se, the end user, they think the issue is one thing, and the tech knows it's another. Being able to kind of communicate that through and get to a point of resolution without really creating conflict. But the book is The Compassionate Geek. It's written by Don Crowley. It's a very short read, just kind of to the point, just a straight to the point kind of book. But I think that's a very good one for techs that you want to improve their soft skills a bit, improve their customer service. It helps kind of take every situation and be empathetic of what that end user is going through, and I think it's a huge book that we like to put in the mix as well.
Yeah. And so I think, the big thing is, kind of structuring all of this, right? We've talked about quite a bit.
Yep.
You talked about training plans. We've talked about books, but, how does a particular staff member know what he or she should be going towards?
Yep.
And so that's where the 1-year plans that we do come in. And, I think the first question that really comes into play with a 1-year plan is, when should you start it? Do you wait until you see an issue, or do you wait until they get through their promotion? Let me figure out how to talk here. Probationary. I still can't say it. Through their first 90 days. Let's just go that way.
Words. They're tough.
And then start it, or when's the right time to really start building that 1-year plan?
Yeah, I think it's right away. So for us, it's just from our hiring process, we have a 3-step interview process. First one is just kind of a quick qualification. Second one is deep dive into technical. And then our third one is really not technical at all. It's much more, is this person going to be a cultural fit? Is this a career move? Or is this are they looking at this as a stepping stone? And does that align with what we're looking for right now? So I think you get past that hiring process. From day one, what we have is a 90-day probationary period for you there, Chuck.
Thank you.
And what we do is we detail out a roadmap. So there's all of the requirements of what we expect for them to pass that probationary period is presented to them right up front. And honestly, we usually ship it out. Once they accept an offer, we'll put together a nice little care package. We'll include a couple of the company cultural books that we require, as well as that roadmap up front. So the day they start, they already know what the expectations are. And I think that's key. So you start it from day one. And that 90 days is very achievable for somebody that aligns with our values, and as long as they have a little bit of a work ethic. So we require, a handful of books. We require a certain portion of supplemental training using that Pluralsight platform. We require them to get a certification in that 90 days. And then there's also just different measurements in terms of reaching certain milestones with KPIs by the end of that 90 days. But the last step, couple weeks of that 90-day period is the development of that 90-day plan or that 1-year plan. So we start it right off the bat with the guys, and as it grows, it changes over time, right? So it's key to get that started right away, because as you feel out that relationship a little more, that plan will change over time. But I think that's the key, is to come to an agreement that the both of you have in terms of what that person's going to accomplish for the next year. So we do it in the 90 days. Every year, sit down with all of our employees, and part of our year-end review is to evaluate how did you do on your plan this year. And then the next step of that is to incorporate what didn't go well into the next plan and identify any new objectives. So it's a year-to-year thing, but even more than that, it's something that we drive almost monthly, because you have to live by it. You can spend all the time in the world creating a great plan, but if you don't have any initiative to drive it, then it's not a good plan at all. So I think, again, that goes back to starting from the top end. The employer has to make a commitment that I do want to develop my staff further, because otherwise all this stuff is just a great plan with no execution. So you got to start it right away when you hire an employee, and you got to drive it at least quarterly. We follow Traction EOS, and they talk about doing rocks, which I believe came from the Rockefeller habits, but that's establishing a quarter-long goal for all of your employees. So that's stuff that we pull from this business plan. That's how we make it live. That's how we make it accessible for everybody. So I think that's the advice I would give.
Yeah, we could probably spend a whole nother podcast talking about the actual 1-year plan and what really should go into that. And maybe we'll talk about that next week. We'll touch on that. But
be a good topic.
Yeah, because there's quite a bit that it's a lot more than just training. That's for sure. So I think maybe next week we could hit that and kind of go from there. But that wraps up our time that we have today, and we will talk to you again next week.
Interact with Tech Talk Detroit at techtalkdetroit.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.